Hi students, this is Professor Arnold, and I want to walk through an example of how to do the supply and demand assignment with you. We're actually going to walk through two examples, but it's one article. And the article was written in 2015 at the end of a 4-year drought when the agriculture in California was severely affected. So this article can support an analysis of the market for walnuts and of the market for pecans. I'd like you to pause now and read the first part of this article, and then I'll switch to the next page, which shows the last part, and you can pause again and read that. So pause this and read it carefully, please. Welcome back. So pause this again and read it carefully. This is the part that you haven't read yet. And welcome back again. So before you even begin analyzing your own news article, read it carefully, just like we did, and then draw the market before anything occurred. So your news articles are describing something that happened which will change the market by shifting one of the curves. So we need to draw a before scenario. You know that these graphs have to be drawn on either graph paper or plain paper, and a straight edge has to be used for all the lines, and everything done very, very neatly. But here's my example, not as neat as you guys are going to be, of the market for walnuts. So step 1, read the article carefully. Step 2, draw your before scenario. Step 3, list the determinants. Get these from the tutorial, not from your textbook, and add this one, weather events and natural disasters. At the time I recorded the tutorial, this wasn't showing up in textbooks, and so I didn't want to add it and confuse students. But in the last 5 years or so, it started showing up, and it's a very useful one. It's useful, but it should only be used if neither 1 through 6 apply. So a weather event or a natural disaster occurs. In the article you just read, it was a drought. Before you use this, be sure that none of the other ones work. And if those work, use them. You might remember we had the same situation with tastes and preferences, which I said only use if none of the others fit. So I've highlighted the things that affect the market for walnuts in the article, and that's what you would want to do if you were reading this yourself. I mean, when you read yours, this is what you're going to want to do. And for now, just pay attention to the yellow, because the green has more to do with pecans than walnuts. So what we know about walnuts is that there's a 4-year drought that definitely could affect the determinant of natural and weather events. So let's just circle that one. Let's actually erase all the ink on the slide, and we'll circle this one. We know that it's affected both supply and quality. So in terms of quality, I'm going to say that possibly that means tastes and preferences are affected. When I see that it affected supply, it's not the same usage of supply in news articles that we have in the class. That means the curve necessarily shifted, but it does mean that there's not as much being sold now. So I'm going to just note here that the quantity has decreased. We also see that the price has doubled, so the price has increased. So if you notice what I'm highlighting here, it's things that have to do with changes in determinants, because that's what will shift it, that's a triangle there, or things that have to tell us what happened to the quantity or price. We see on our next highlight that farmers are starting to look at other places and other nuts to grow. So conceivably that could affect the number of sellers. We see here growers have seen an almost dollar increase in per pound in the last few years. That has to do with per pound of pecans. But if pecan prices are increasing, then possibly we've got a price of related goods things going on for the consumers, because walnuts and pecans, the article made clear, were substitutes. And we've also got a change in the price of alternative good the firms could produce if they're now bringing more money. And then finally, again, we've got this idea that California growers are kind of thinking of possibly choosing to grow pecans instead of walnuts. So we've looked through the article, we've highlighted things that affect the market for walnuts, we've put them in the places they need to be put in terms of what determinant they're related to. And we also know that the quantity has decreased and the price has increased. And this is where we're going to continue. So again, step 1, read the article. Step 2, draw your baseline graph. Step 3, write out your determinants. Step 4, go through the article and highlight things that affect either the quantity and price or the determinants. Our next step is to take the quantity and price information and see if we can use that to help us with the graph. We can narrow down possibilities if we have price and quantity information. The articles have different amounts of it, but with this one we're very fortunate because it has both. So we know if the price went up that the new price has to be above the old price. So wherever the new equilibrium is going to be, it's going to have to be up here, above P1. And since the quantity decreased, we know that wherever the new equilibrium is going to be, it has to be in this range. And as you can see, we've only got one quadrant which meets both of those specifications. So our new equilibrium point, where the supply and demand curve crosses, is going to have to be in this quadrant. We have 4 choices here. Shift to the left of demand, shift to the right of demand, shift to the left of supply, and shift to the right of supply. Only one of those gets us into that quadrant. Shifting demand left puts us down here. Shifting demand right puts us here. Shifting supply right puts us here. Just only shifting supply left puts us in that first quadrant. So this is really good news because this is part of what I need. Supply curve shifted left, causing the equilibrium price to increase and the equilibrium quantity to decrease. When you do your paper, this all needs typed out and no abbreviations, please. The determinant that caused the shift is, well, we know it's not going to be a demand determinant because we shifted the supply curve. So we have 3 choices here. And remember, we're only going to use 7 if 1 or 6 don't apply. So what we want to know is if the article supports a decrease in the number of sellers or an actual decrease in the number of sellers, or the sellers producing alternative goods. Now, we can't make assumptions. Hold on just a minute. Let me get back. So we can't make assumptions, and there's a lot of good ones we can make. But for this assignment, we don't make assumptions. We use information stated in the article. So if I go to the article, I see farmers are starting to look to other places. And I see a couple of calls have been made. So I don't really see that this has happened yet, at least as of 2015, so I'm going to cross this out. Now in terms of alternative goods firms can produce, if pecans are an alternative good to walnuts and actually need to be grown in different parts of the country, might not be reasonable. Does the article say pecans could be grown in California? Let's take a look. A little unclear there. Possibly. But we really don't have what we need to support that, do we? There's nothing that said that they've been shifting from walnuts to pecans. So weather events and natural disasters fits here. Weather events, natural disasters, and the information in the article that supported the determinant is the drought caused prices to increase and the amount sold to decrease. This is of walnuts. And drought is a weather event. So let's do the same thing for the market for pecans. We're going to take a look at what we highlighted in green. We'll use a little bit of the yellow highlights too, mostly what we highlighted in green, and we'll see if we can focus in on information that applies to any of these determinants changing. We'll also see if there's any information for what happened to the price and quantity. So we know that the price of walnuts has increased and that we've seen a significant shift in the consumption of pecans. So we've definitely got price of related goods. We also know that the quality, because we were told that earlier in the article, the quality is declining, and that could suggest that we're now going to prefer pecans because walnuts aren't tasting so good these days. If we look at the next line, we've got that there is $1 increase per pound. So we've definitely got the price going up. We see that the industry was booming even before the California drought, so we've got the quantity going up. Before the drought, of course, is our before scenario in our graph. But there's a lot here to support that the boom is continuing and is in fact driven by the drought. The interest is showing no signs of letting up, it says here. Here it says a significant shift in consumption of pecans with the price of walnuts on the uptick. You know, the demand of pecans in Asia, the export demand, we can't use that because we don't know why it happened. We don't know if their taste and preference increased or the income or anything. So we really can't use that information. Remember, we only want to use what's stated in the article. In terms of supply, if number of sellers had worked for walnuts, meaning leaving walnuts, to pecans. It would work for pecans too, but we all already kind of decided that number of sellers wasn't going to go. Weather events, natural disasters, that affected walnuts, not pecans. So we actually aren't even finding good supply determinants here. So let's hope that when we look at our price and our quantities, when we look at our price and quantity going up and we look at our graph, let's just hope that we're going to be able to support a demand shift. So again, we're going to draw our before scenario, market for pecans. And we know that the price increased. So we're up here. We were up here last time too. But this time before, with walnuts, the quantity decreased. With the market for pecans, the quantity is increasing. So now you can see we are in this quadrant. And the only curve shift that can support this is a shift to the right of demand. Many times students will read the article and they'll see that 2 curve shifts are possible, but only shift 1, because 1 is going to be predominant in your article, and shifting 2 really will confuse things. So find the predominant situation that occurred and shift that curve. So the demand curve shifted to the right, causing the equilibrium price to increase and the equilibrium quantity increase. In terms of our determinants, we've got these 2 possibilities. We've got a lot of support for price of related goods. We've also got a decent amount of support for quality of this popular nuts. Increased prices coupled with declining quality, consumers are looking for alternatives. So you could list both. It's fine to list both 2 determinants, but it's also fine to only list price of related goods, simply because taste and preferences is the catch-all category. So list one or both, but what you don't want to do is only list quality. The reason for that is because this is one of the most clear statements in the article. With the price of walnuts on the uptick, we've seen a significant shift in consumption of pecans. So I'm going to write the determinant that caused this shift is price of related goods. And I'm going to add the other one too. Tastes and preferences. The information that supported this determinant, or in this case these determinants, are the price of walnuts, a substitute good, increased according to the article, and the quality of walnuts declined. So hopefully this is helpful to you. Watch it as many times as you need. Watch the tutorial on supply demand as many times as you need. And best of luck with your assignment.